I still remember the exact time, 7:03 p.m., when my life shifted into a direction I never saw coming. My name's Jordan. I'm 19, or I was at the time this story started. I'd spent the summer before college grinding out hours at a greasy diner near the interstate, coming home smelling like onion rings and regret, just to earn a little extra cash before classes started. Every shift, I'd remind myself it was temporary, that soon I'd be trading in my name tag for textbooks. All thanks to the college fund my parents had supposedly saved for me since I was little. That fund had always been the unspoken promise in our house. It was mentioned at birthdays, in congratulatory cards, even by extended family. Your parents have worked so hard to give you a head start, my grandma once said, squeezing my shoulder. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? I wasn't some golden child, though. That title belonged to my older sister, Emily. She was 25, single mom, 2-year-old son, and the epicenter of every family gathering. If Emily sneezed, my parents acted like she'd composed a symphony. She moved back in after her divorce, or maybe before. The timeline was always fuzzy, and it was like our whole house started orbiting around her problems. Suddenly, dinners were shifted around her custody schedule. The guest room became her room, and even the dog seemed to sense she was top priority now. Still, I didn't resent her. Not really. I knew things were hard for her. I figured once I went off to college, life would rebalance. I had worked hard to earn my spot. Late nights, AP classes, test prep, applications that took weeks to polish. I got into a top-tier business program across the country, the kind of place where they breed CEOs. And when that acceptance letter came, it felt like all those years of biting my tongue and pushing through the background noise had finally paid off. My parents had even smiled, proud for a minute, like they were finally seeing me. We'd talked about dorm shopping, about flying out together. I'd even picked out a cheap secondhand laptop, waiting to buy it until we had the budget conversation. That conversation never came. What came instead was a Friday night family dinner that fell off from the start. Emily wasn't there. She was staying with a friend for the weekend, which was rare. My dad grilled steaks, which he only did when he was trying to soften the blow of bad news. And my mom was quiet, too quiet, glancing at him like they'd rehearsed something. I kept thinking maybe someone was sick. Maybe grandma's tests came back bad. Maybe. We need to talk about college, my mom said, mid-bite, setting her fork down. I paused, steak knife in hand, still half expecting a congratulatory surprise. A scholarship maybe. A flight booked. What about it? I asked, already uneasy. She glanced at my dad again. He cleared his throat. We had to reallocate some of the college fund, he said, and I swear I didn't even understand what that meant at first. Reallocate? Like, moved it to a different account? Okay, I said, trying to stay calm. So what does that mean for me? It means, my mom said, her voice calm in that way that made it worse. We used the majority of it to help your sister with a down payment. For the house. There was this hollow ringing in my ears, like my brain refused to process what I'd just heard. Wait, what? She needed stability, my dad added quickly, as if that would justify it. For her and the baby. You understand, right? A house is an investment. She deserves to raise him somewhere safe. My mouth opened, then closed. I looked down at my plate like the mashed potatoes might have the answer. I start college in a week, I finally said. How much is left? They hesitated. That's when I knew the answer. I didn't even need to hear the number. There's enough for maybe one semester, my mom said. If you stay local. Community college is a great option. I couldn't believe it. They'd spent 18 years telling me that fund was for my future. My education. They'd made it sound untouchable. Sacred. And now, because Emily had a messy breakup and wanted to start her home with a nice porch, I was being told to scale back everything I'd planned. To settle. To be grateful. And here's the part that still messes with me. They genuinely thought I would understand. That I would take the hit with a smile because it was for family. You should be proud, my mom said, like this was some noble sacrifice. You're helping your nephew have a home. I didn't yell. I didn't flip the table or throw my plate or storm out in a blaze of fury. I just stood up, quietly, walked upstairs, packed a bag. Not everything, just enough. My laptop, a few clothes, the essentials. Then I walked out the front door. They didn't follow, and I didn't look back. That was the last time I spoke to them face to face. But it was only the beginning of everything that followed. Let me tell you what happened next. When I left that night, I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I didn't even say goodbye. I think that's what haunted them most, the silence. I went to stay with my best friend Dylan, who lived 15 minutes away. His mom, bless her, didn't ask questions. She just made up the pull-out couch, handed me a blanket, and said, "Whatever happened, just know you're safe here." I didn't cry that night. I didn't eat either. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, my mind a storm of betrayal, confusion, and something deeper, a cold, growing detachment. I had always thought I'd be the one person in the family to escape. That maybe, just maybe, they'd cheer me on for once. But no, I wasn't the main character in this story. Emily was. I was just the subplot. Over the next few days, the calls came. My mom, then my dad, then Emily. Voicemails ranged from soft concern, "Just come home, sweetie. We can talk this out," to firm guilt-tripping, "We're your parents, Jordan. You don't just walk away from family." But I didn't respond. I couldn't. Every time I thought of them, my stomach twisted. I started thinking back to every little thing I'd ignored. Like how my birthday dinners always got cut short because Emily had a rough day. How she got a car at 17, and I got a "you'll appreciate saving up for it yourself." How when I made honor roll, my mom smiled and said, "Let's not brag in front of your sister. She's dealing with enough." It was like my whole life had been one long supporting role in Emily's redemption arc. I deferred my admission. I didn't really have a choice. With only enough money for a semester and no stable housing, I had to pause. I got a job at a local tech startup Dylan's uncle worked at, nothing fancy, just customer support, but it was steady, and it gave me time to breathe. I started learning back-end code on my lunch breaks, fiddling with small scripts, teaching myself more advanced concepts online. Honestly, it felt good. Quiet. Focused. No chaos. Meanwhile, I kept hearing things from mutuals. Emily had moved into a cute 3-bedroom starter home on the nicer side of town. My parents had helped paint the walls and install a playset in the backyard for her son, Caleb. Facebook photos showed smiling faces, barbecues, family brunches. I wasn't tagged in a single one. It was like I'd been cleanly edited out of the family narrative. Just a temporary inconvenience they hoped would sort itself out. 6 months passed. Then 8. Then the texts started again. My dad. "Emily's having a tough time with the mortgage. We might need to adjust things for a while." Me. Didn't respond. My mom. "Your sister is struggling, Jordan. Don't you want to help her?" Still, I stayed quiet. Then Emily herself texted, "You've had your break. Can you come home now and grow up?" Mom and dad are stretched thin. That one made my blood boil. Grow up? This from the person who used my college future as her personal bank loan? I typed out a dozen replies. Deleted them all. I wasn't ready. Not yet. Around that time, something unexpected happened at work. One of the developers left suddenly, and the team was underwater. I'd been helping with back-end automation in my spare time, and when I stepped in to assist, my code caught the CTO's attention. Within 2 weeks, I was offered a junior developer position. Full-time. Benefits. Double my current salary. 3 months later, I had my own project. 6 months after that, I pitched an idea to streamline a security tool the company used. They liked it. Let me run with it. And a year later, I had left the company, partnered with 2 other developers, and started my own business. We built and launched a cybersecurity product focused on small businesses. It took off faster than we expected. Within 4 months, we had contracts lined up. My personal take-home by the end of year 1, just over $160,000. I was 20, living in a modest but stylish apartment, paying my own bills. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I owed anyone anything. Except, apparently, my parents didn't agree. Because as soon as my name started popping up in tech circles, the family resurfaced like a bad sequel. My mom called. Then my dad. Then Emily. Again. It was like they had a radar for when I was doing well. But this time, they didn't even bother pretending it was about reconnecting. The first message from Emily said, "Heard you're doing well. Caleb's preschool just raised tuition. Any chance you could help out? You'd be doing a good thing for your nephew." I almost laughed. After all this time, no apology, no acknowledgement, just a straight-up handout request. I didn't respond. The next week, a long email came from my mom. It was 5 paragraphs, starting with "I hope you're well," and ending with a not-so-subtle nudge that family supports family, and that Emily has been through so much. Apparently, Emily had defaulted on a few payments. The house was in pre-foreclosure. My parents were emotionally exhausted. They'd sacrificed so much for both of us, and it would mean the world if I could pitch in, just for a while, just until things stabilized. No mention of the college fund. No mention of what they took from me. Just expectations layered with passive guilt. Again, I didn't answer. 2 days later, I got a voicemail from my dad. His voice was firm, almost angry. "You've made your point, Jordan. But you're an adult now, and adults don't hold grudges. We need help. Your family needs help. And we were there for you." "Were you? Were you really?" "Because the way I remembered it, you left me out to dry." I started writing a letter. I wasn't sure if I'd send it yet, but I needed to get it out. I needed them to hear what I never got to say that night. I wrote about the betrayal, about how it felt to be told I should be grateful that my life was sacrificed for Emily's comfort, about how every moment of favoritism had chipped away at my belief that I mattered to them, that I was ever more than a footnote to their golden child. I poured it all out. 3 pages. No yelling. No drama. Just facts. Just the truth. I saved it. Didn't send it. Not yet. Because something told me this wasn't over. And I was right. 2 weeks later, I got a knock at my apartment door. And when I looked through the peephole, it was Emily, holding Caleb on her hip, wearing that look, the one that said she was about to ask for something big. I didn't open the door, but I stood there, frozen, as she knocked again, then called out, "I know you're in there. Please. I just need to talk." My heart pounded. She had driven 2 hours to show up unannounced. And somehow, I knew this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about something bigger, and I had a sinking feeling I was about to find out what. I didn't open the door. I stood there, motionless, barely breathing, as Emily knocked one more time, then waited, like she was expecting me to cave the way I always had. The seconds dragged. I stared at the cheap wood grain of the apartment door like it might split open on its own and answer for me. But it didn't, and I didn't move. Eventually, I heard her sigh. Then her voice softened, like she was trying on sympathy. "Jordan, please. I'm not here to fight. I just need to talk. I know we haven't been great to you, but..." She caught herself there. We, not she. There was still no ownership. No apology. "You don't have to open the door. Just listen," she said, almost whispering now. "The bank's taking the house. I have nowhere to go. Caleb doesn't understand what's happening. He's scared, and I don't know what to do." My jaw clenched. And still, I didn't open the door. She stood there for another minute. Maybe 2. Then she knocked again. 3 light, hollow taps. And I thought maybe she'd say something else. But she didn't. I heard her footsteps retreat. A pause. Then the sound of her car door shutting. The engine turning over. Fading away. And then silence. I stood frozen in my own apartment for a long time after that. Not because I was tempted to chase after her, but because I wasn't. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt anymore. Just numb. Like she was a ghost walking through a life I'd already buried. That night, I sat in the middle of my living room, laptop open, and looked at everything I'd built in the last year. The small product my partners and I had launched, let's call it Vault Lock, was thriving. We'd secured a few high-profile clients, one of which had just signed a renewal contract that pushed our projected revenue over $1.2 million for the next year. I wasn't swimming in cash, but I was comfortable, secure, and for the first time in my life, seen, not by my family, but by the world I had chosen to build instead. But despite all that progress, I wasn't at peace, because I had never told my story. Not really. I had just disappeared, buried myself in code and contracts and startup hustle. I hadn't processed anything, hadn't cried, hadn't allowed myself to grieve what I lost. So, over the next few weeks, I started writing. Not to send to anyone, just to write. I pulled out a blank notebook. Yeah, old school, and poured everything out. From the first time I was overlooked in favor of Emily, to the moment my parents dropped the bombshell about the college fund. Every small moment of erasure, every quiet sacrifice, every celebration that was dimmed so she could shine. I wrote about the guilt, the shame, the ridiculous sense of loyalty I still felt, even after everything. And slowly, as the pages filled, the weight started to lift. Meanwhile, work kept climbing. We brought on a small team of interns. We opened a real office, modest, but ours. I started mentoring some of the younger developers, and for the first time, I saw what it felt like to be the person someone else looked up to be seen as capable, reliable, worth investing in. One day, I got an email from my old high school, an invitation to speak on Career Day. At first, I laughed and almost deleted it. But then I thought about it. I had sat in those plastic chairs, listened to guest speakers drone on about hard work and perseverance, and none of it had felt real. Maybe I could do better. So I said yes. When the day came, I wore jeans and a hoodie, no suit. I walked into that gymnasium and told 100 juniors and seniors exactly what had happened. Not the messy family details, but the truth. That sometimes the people who are supposed to believe in you don't. That sometimes you have to bet on yourself because no one else will. I told them about the betrayal, about the startup, about sleeping on a friend's couch, about teaching myself to code from free online courses and refusing to disappear. And afterward, I had a line of students waiting to talk to me. One kid, Zaid, a wiry 17-year-old with braces and a notebook full of startup ideas, pulled me aside and said, "That was the first time anyone made this feel possible." And that hit me. That's when I started to feel something again. Not anger, not resentment, purpose. But just as I was beginning to stand firmly in this new version of myself, life, as it always does, found a way to test me again. I got a letter. Not an email, not a voicemail, a letter from my parents. Handwritten. It was postmarked from a new address. A small apartment complex I recognized from the town over. The house was gone. I read it slowly. My mother's handwriting was neat, but tired. You could see it in the slant, the fading ink. She explained that Emily had officially defaulted, that they had used what little they had left to help her stay afloat, but it wasn't enough, that they had to sell some of their belongings, that my dad had picked up part-time shifts at a hardware store, that they were reconsidering everything. And then, near the end, a single line that felt like it had been dipped in ice water before being written. "We never meant to choose her over you. We just didn't realize we were doing it." I closed the letter, sat with it for a while, and for the first time, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe understanding. That doesn't mean I called them. It doesn't mean I opened the door that day Emily came back a second time. Because yes, she came back. Not with Caleb this time. Alone. 3 weeks after the letter. I was coming home from a team dinner when I saw her sitting on the steps outside my apartment building, arms wrapped around her knees like a teenager waiting for a ride. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, but dimmer. Like someone had turned the volume of her presence way down. I debated walking past her. But I didn't. I sat on the step beside her. Not touching. Not speaking. Just sat. She was the first to break the silence. "Did you get their letter?" I nodded. She exhaled slowly. "I messed up," she said. "I didn't see it until it was too late." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She kept talking. Said she thought she could handle it. That she never meant for me to lose out. That she'd convinced herself I was the strong one. The one who could figure it out. That I didn't need the help. "But you did," she whispered. "You needed them. And I let them believe you didn't." And just like that, the breath caught in my throat. Because she was right. She had always let them believe that. And I had let it eat me alive. We sat there a long time. Then she stood up. "I'm not asking for anything," she said. "I just wanted you to know. I'm staying with a friend now. Looking for work. Trying to fix things." I watched her walk away. Didn't say a word. But something in me softened. Not to her. To me. To the version of me that had been waiting all this time for someone to finally say, "You weren't crazy. You were right to be angry." I kept writing. Started posting online. Small essays. Reflections on family, loyalty, and self-worth. I didn't use names. I didn't air the dirty laundry. But people read it. Shared it. Reached out. And one day, I got an email from a publisher. They wanted to talk. About turning the writing into something bigger. A book. Maybe a memoir. Maybe something hybrid. About rebuilding. About resilience. I didn't say yes right away. But I didn't say no either. Because maybe the best revenge isn't silence. Maybe it's telling your story loud enough that no one else feels as invisible as you once did. And just when I thought the chapter was closing, a new message popped up on my phone. This time, from an unknown number. But the preview read, "We're reaching out on behalf of your parents regarding a financial matter." I froze. Because deep down, I had a feeling. This wasn't about Emily anymore. It was about something else. Something bigger. And I wasn't sure I was ready for what came next. I didn't answer the message right away. I sat there, staring at the screen like it had personally insulted me. "We're reaching out on behalf of your parents regarding a financial matter." No name. No signature. Just that. Vague, clinical, and cold. The kind of message that didn't ask, it expected. The kind of message people send when they believe you're obligated. When they think you're still tethered to the guilt they planted in you years ago. I didn't delete it. I archived it. Then I opened the letter drawer in my desk, pulled out my notebook, the one I'd been using to write everything down, and flipped to a blank page. At the top, I wrote one word in capital letters. Enough. I'd spent the last 2 years rebuilding my life from the ground up. I'd gone from couch surfing college dropout to startup founder. I had carved out a new identity with my bare hands, bleeding through late nights and 20-hour coding binges and a million silent sacrifices no one saw. But they still thought I was the same kid who would bend, who would compromise, who would fold under guilt wrapped in concern. They were wrong, and it was time to prove it. Let me rewind a bit. Because to understand what I was about to do, you need to know how much I'd learned in the past year. Not just about business, but about leverage, about silence, about how the most powerful move isn't always shouting or slamming doors. Sometimes, it's just quietly preparing the trap and waiting for the perfect moment to spring it. I never set out to be petty. I'm not a revenge guy by default. I'm methodical, strategic. But what they'd done, what they kept doing, wasn't just a betrayal. It was an ongoing campaign of manipulation dressed up as family love. And once I saw it for what it was, I couldn't unsee it. The message wasn't random. I did some digging. I traced the number through a people search service and confirmed what I suspected. It was tied to a small legal office 2 towns over. A paralegal had sent it, which meant there was paperwork involved. So I called the office, masked my number, asked for general information. Turns out, my parents had submitted a request for financial mediation. Not a lawsuit. Not yet. But a formal attempt to negotiate family financial contributions. In plain English, they wanted to legally suggest that I owed them support. That, as their successful child, I had a familial obligation to help with their expenses. I almost laughed. Almost. But then I saw the list of financial justifications they included in the paperwork. They itemized everything. Every childhood expense. Every grocery bill. Every back-to-school shopping spree. Every medical copay. Even the money they spent buying my first phone at 13, $129.99, was listed like a receipt they were now trying to cash. And the kicker? They had bundled Emily's mortgage payments into the same file. They were calling it a shared family investment. They were claiming the house, the one they gave her with my college fund, was a mutual benefit to the household, and thus, I was expected to reinvest in the recovery of family assets. I sat back in my chair, stunned, and then I smiled. It was the first time I'd smiled about them in months. Because now, finally, they were playing in my arena. They had made it legal, which meant I could make it tactical. I called my lawyer. Yeah, I had one. A good one. Her name was Cassandra, and she was the kind of attorney who could dismantle a contract like it was a paper swan. I'd hired her when we incorporated the company, but I'd kept her on a modest retainer just in case. And this was case. I sent her the documents. She read through them, made a few dry comments. Your parents seem to think parenting is a subscription service with retroactive billing, and then asked me one question. Do you want to fight this quietly, or do you want to make a statement? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I sat with that question for a day, and the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. They had gone public with their manipulation. They had put it in writing. They had crossed a line that should never be crossed. It was time to make a statement. The setup began 2 days later. I made a few calls, quiet ones, to some old high school friends, a couple college acquaintances, even an ex-professor from the university I should have attended. I was looking for stories. Not dirt, just patterns. And oh boy, did I find them. Turns out, I wasn't the only one. My parents had a history. Small things, at first. Asking family friends for temporary help and never repaying it. Co-signing loans for cousins, then vanishing when payments came due. Emily, she had borrowed money from a friend to cover urgent home repairs and ghosted her once the check cleared. The more I looked, the more I found. And suddenly, the picture was bigger than just me. They weren't just manipulative. They were systemic. I compiled everything into a folder. Then I wrote a letter. This one wasn't emotional. It was clinical, precise, a counter-response to the mediation request. I included a line-by-line rejection of every financial obligation, accompanied by receipts, statements, and legally documented instances showing I had been misled, financially cut off, and targeted. I cited fraud, I cited misappropriation of educational funds. And then I added a clause. Any further attempts to contact me, legally or personally, would result in a formal countersuit for damages, emotional distress, and lost educational opportunity. I had Cassandra review it. She added one sentence to the end that made me grin. Should you wish to dispute this, be advised that all future correspondence will be escalated to discovery. Meaning, I dare you to sue me. Because I have everything. We mailed it. Certified. Tracked. I knew it would land on a Thursday. I also knew that every Thursday night, my parents had dinner with a small circle of friends from their local church. A dinner where they often shared family updates. So I waited. Sure enough, Friday morning, I got an email from my mother. Just one line. How could you? No greeting. No explanation. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because the trap had already been set. But I wasn't done. See, revenge isn't just about hitting back. Sometimes, it's about thriving louder than they ever expected you to. So I doubled down on my writing. I took the book deal. I started outlining chapters, some about betrayal, some about success, some about what it means to rebuild yourself from scratch when the people who made you decide you're not worth investing in. And when the publisher asked if I had any personal stories that could anchor the narrative, I told them yes. Tons. And I had receipts. Still, I changed the names. I wasn't out to destroy anyone. But I was done protecting people who had never once protected me. Then, just when I thought things were cooling down, I got a call from Dylan. My old friend. The one who let me crash on his couch. He sounded hesitant. You might want to sit down, he said. Why? I just got a message from Emily. I went cold. She's asking to talk, he continued. Said she wants to clear the air. Said you've gone too far. That the family's reputation is at stake. She wants a meeting. All of us. I sat in silence. Emily was calling for a meeting? What, like a boardroom? She gave a time and place, Dylan said. Next Saturday. Her friend's house. She said she'd explain everything. I didn't reply. I was already thinking 10 moves ahead. A meeting meant exposure. A meeting meant confrontation. A meeting meant the final setup. Because what Emily didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had already recorded the original conversation about the college fund. The one where they told me, point blank, that it was gone. That Emily needed stability. That I should be grateful. I had the audio, the date, the context, all legal. And now? Now I had a choice. Attend the meeting and confront the past head on, or let the silence speak louder. I didn't know yet. But one thing was certain. I wasn't the scared kid who walked out the door that night. I didn't RSVP. Not right away. I let the invitation hang in the air like smoke. Emily wanted a meeting. A sit-down. A reconciliation wrapped in veiled threats and backhanded guilt. Classic. Dylan texted me 3 days before the date with a screenshot. Emily had added 2 new people to the group message, my dad and mom. The message was short. We're hoping Jordan will be mature enough to hear us out. We were all hurt, but it's time to come together. We've reserved the space. Everyone deserves closure. Closure. Funny word for people who hadn't said a single apology in over a year. Still, I told Dylan I'd go. Not for them. For me. Because sometimes, closure doesn't come from reconciliation. It comes from clarity, from seeing things for what they are, and finally choosing to step away without leaving the door cracked open for maybe. I showed up 10 minutes early. The friend's house turned out to be a staged-looking Airbnb on the edge of town. Neutral furniture, beige walls, cheap art. I stepped inside to find them all seated in the living room like they'd been rehearsing a courtroom drama. My dad stood up first. Wore a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Jordan, he said. Glad you could make it. Emily stayed seated, arms crossed. My mom offered a small wave, like we were distant co-workers instead of estranged family. I nodded once. Said nothing. I took the armchair across from them, calm, composed. Emily started. We've had a rough year, she said. All of us. I think emotions got out of hand. I waited. She glanced at my parents, then continued. We didn't mean to make you feel abandoned. I let the silence drag. That word, feel, was doing too much work. As if the problem wasn't what they did, but how I reacted. Then my mom jumped in. You have to understand, Emily was going through a very difficult time. We were trying to keep the family together. And you thought sacrificing my future would do that? I said, voice calm. My dad leaned forward. It wasn't a sacrifice. It was a decision. We didn't expect you to blow it out of proportion. There it was. That word. decision, like I was a budget item. A rounding error. I just want to be clear on one thing, I said, slowly. Did you use my college fund for Emily's house? They hesitated. Then Emily rolled her eyes. Yes, but. No, but. I held up a hand. Just yes or no. My mom flinched. My dad's jaw clenched. Yes, he said finally. We did. Good, I said, and reached into my bag. I pulled out a small recorder. Hit play. Their voices crackled to life in the room, from that dinner, over a year ago. Their exact words. We used the majority of it to help your sister with a down payment. She deserves stability. You should be proud. You're helping your nephew have a home. The room froze. Emily went pale. My mom gasped. My dad's eyes darted to the recorder like it might explode. I recorded that conversation. I said. I kept it. Because I knew, eventually, you'd try to rewrite history. That's illegal, my dad snapped. Not in this state, I replied. Single-party consent. I reached into my bag again, pulled out a folder, placed it gently on the table. This is a full response to your mediation request, I said, including documentation of how you misused my college fund, plus sworn statements from people you financially manipulated in the past. Cassandra, my lawyer, has a copy. She's prepared to file if you escalate this again. They were silent. Emily's lip curled. So what? This is your revenge. I looked at her. Not with anger. Not with pity. With clarity. No, I said. This is me drawing a boundary. The kind that doesn't bend. You used me. Then you tried to gaslight me. Then, when I found success without you, you tried to invoice me for your failure. And now you're angry I'm not playing along. My mom's voice cracked. We're your family. And family doesn't do what you did, I said. Family doesn't steal your future and then demand gratitude for it. I stood up. I'm not suing you, I said. I don't want your money. I don't want your apologies. They looked confused. Suspicious. Emily narrowed her eyes. Then what do you want? I smiled. I want distance. And with that, I turned and walked toward the door. My mom stood up, panicked. Wait, Jordan, don't you want to fix this? I paused, hand on the doorknob. No, I said. You don't fix a fire by moving back into the ashes. And then I left. That was the last time I saw them in person. In the months that followed, they tried to reach out again. Emails, texts, even a letter from a new lawyer trying to renegotiate terms. I ignored them all. I had set the boundary, and I was done explaining it. The book deal went through. We launched a pre-order campaign tied to a nonprofit that funds scholarships for students who lose access to college because of financial abuse. We hit 10,000 pre-orders in the first month. The title? Collateral Son. Yeah, that felt right. One night, about 6 months later, I got a message from Dylan. A screenshot of a Facebook post. It was Emily. She'd changed jobs. Moved to a different town. The caption read, starting over. Learning from mistakes. Grateful for second chances. No mention of me. No apology. But that was fine. I didn't need it. Some people grow quietly. Some people never do. I wasn't watching anymore. I was building. The startup passed 7 figures in revenue. We hired more staff. I took weekends off for the first time in years. I taught a coding boot camp for underserved teens. One of them, a 17-year-old girl named Jada, messaged me months later to say she got her first developer internship. Said she remembered my story. Said it made her feel like she wasn't broken. And that was more healing than any apology ever could have been. So no, I didn't burn their world down. I didn't need to. I just built something better. Something they could never touch. And that was enough. That was more than enough. Because revenge isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes it's just peace. Earned, protected, and completely out of their reach. And I slept better than I ever had. With the door locked. And the bridge burned. On purpose.